This century introduced us to a wild and messy era of rapid technological and social media advancements. And then, as novices in the digital age, and I most definitely was way back then, many ministries and leaders misuse these tools, often prioritizing personal ambition over redemptive purposes. One such cautionary tale that you're all familiar with is the rise and the fall of Mars Hill and its leader, Mark Driscoll, whose pursuit of self-promotion ultimately brought harm to countless souls. The allure of brand building and building your name and putting it out into the public space, alongside selfish ambition masked as ministry, it has led many down a dangerous path. This trend wasn't isolated to Mars Hill. It actually reflects a broader issue within Christian communities. The rise and the fall of many good men and women that we have seen over the past couple of decades, it just seems to be a regular occurrence. And I don't think that it's a coincidence that social media seems to always be associated with the popularizing of these fallen former heroes. And while platforms like social media can serve to spread God's truth, as we talk about all the time around here, the redemptive use of technology, they can also amplify pride. They can create dichotomies between public and private personas and ultimately harm the church's witness. And we all have our stories. We've seen this with several pastors, for example, who create public side hustles, part-time jobs, where they seem to be more interested in what they do on social media and the followers they build than their local churches and the flock that God has called them to shepherd. Now, I want you to hear this carefully. My aim here is not to highlight any individual, not to highlight their fame or to highlight their sin. Because the truth is, all of us are tempted similarly. Even the lesser of us with just a handful of followers and a few likes on our favorite social media platforms. You don't need 100,000 followers to be just like them. There's a little bit of narcissism in all of us. It's one of the reasons that, and there were several, but one, that we wanted to rebrand our ministry to Life Over Coffee and to take my name off of it. To move me off center stage is something that we have been working diligently on for the past 10 years, because I know that I am not unlike them, and so I'm not throwing shade on them as though I am not tempted as well. Technology isn't the enemy. Technology is a tool. When we use it redemptively, it can glorify God. It can spread His fame. It can make much of Christ, and it can encourage others. But without vigilance, it can devolve into a snare of selfish ambition. And so my appeal here is for all of us to talk about these things aloud with humility, recognizing that the temptations are in us as well. And we want to steward these tools also with humility, holding one another accountable and ensuring that our use of them reflects the redemptive purposes of Christ. I do not have really an answer to this problem that can be totally satisfying, as though it could remove sin and remove all temptation. I am not suggesting that we get off social media and stop using technology because it can truly amplify the gospel. I'm not suggesting that every pastor with a side hustle is sinning. I'm not saying that at all. But I do recommend that you pray for your pastor, especially in context of what I am saying here, if he is building a brand that is adjacent to the church that he serves. I further suggest that you have a frank discussion with him about his worldview, about his philosophy of ministry, and about his purpose in quasi-shepherding those who are not part of his flock. It would also be worth your while to evaluate with all humility, with the log firmly planted in your eye socket, how he is caring for the flock that God has called him to serve, how he is serving in that local church and effectively helping that local church as he is building some type of side hustle. And again, a part-time job does not have to be wrong, but we want to interact with these issues and engage our brothers and sisters with full-throated love and courage, because it would be much better to have these conversations now than after we hear on some social media platform that another man or another woman has fallen into sin. Maybe Colossians 3:23 would be the best way to sum this up. The great apostle Paul said, "Whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord